Hello viewers and welcome to this episode of Brm TV, in which we take a look at our layout of the month, Charwelton. In the studio, Phil Parker takes a look at a kit from painting history, and I get started with some painting techniques on this little kit that I built last issue.
My name's Simon Howard and this is Charwelton into the 80s. It's a member of the CBM diesel group. The layout is 00 gauge, 16.5mm fine scale, and it's 4mm scale, 00 gauge. The layout itself was actually built by the Wolverhampton Model Railway Club, and they used C&L fine scale flexi-track and hand-built points. The layout is based on Charwelton Station, which was on the Great Central Railway line before it was abolished by the Beeching Acts. I believe it took the Wolverhampton Model Railway Club about 3 or 4 years to build. We've had the layout in our ownership for 2 years, and it's taken us about 18 months to convert it to what you see today. The layout is DCC. We've run DCC on a few of our other layouts before, which we also have. It's enabled us to have a more realistic operation. You can run more trains on the same bit of line. You can also have the sound and the lights as well. The setup at shows normally goes quite quickly. It's quite easy to set up. The front boards, the scenic boards, pair with the fiddle yard boards, and they're crated up with end boards, so it takes us just about 2 hours from arriving at a venue to having the boards up and connecting all the wires underneath the layout. I don't think we'd change anything too much. We'd probably make the wiring a little bit easier than it has been to convert it to DCC from DC. Dave did most of the scenic work on the layout. He's used Woodland Scenics products, static grass. He's also used some of the Milfor static grass products as well. Learning some new electrical skills, learning how to build a diode matrix was one of the most interesting aspects I came across, as I've never done one before, and it caused a little bit of head scratching as we were doing it. It wasn't so much research on building the layout, it was more for the stock formations and the trains that we run. We've tried to have it as a layout, even though the line was closed in the 1960s, we've done it as though it's still open, so we've tried to have trains that will run as it would have done. The stock came first, as we have another layout called Thornyard, which is also 1980s BR Blue diesels, and we decided to get a bigger layout just for fun. Sort of future show-wise, we're at Derby in May this year, and we're looking forward to that. We always have a good time at Derby. In 2020, we're at Wigan in October, and 2021 we are at Rail-X in Aylesbury, and we're also at the Hornby Magazine show in October at Milton Keynes.
Today I'm going to be making a nice simple O-gauge barn. Now this is probably the cheapest O-gauge building kit I could find, and it comes from Northumbrian Printing Services, whose web address will be appearing on the bottom of the screen, and costs a grand total of £8. I don't think you can beat that cost-wise for buildings in 7mm. However, what we get is a nice simple resin building. So we get a couple of ends, front and back, some doors. That's nice, and you can tell it comes from the wargaming world with this somewhat coarse roof. but it does the job, and it'll be great for sitting at the back of the layout and just filling up a bit of space. The thing with resin kits is there is a bit of preparation required. These have been done in a single-sided mould. I can tell that because the back is very, very smooth, but has got some raised edges on where the resin's just crept up a little bit. And so the first job is just to take a fairly coarse file and do this outdoors with a mask on because you don't want to breathe in the resin, and just clean up all the edges around there. You can tell I've done this because I've not gone outdoors and put my mask on. And just make sure all the corners are nice and sharp and nice and clean. It does vary a lot between kits. Some kits are a little bit rough. This one was actually pretty good. I just had to clean out a little bit of flash in one or two of the corners and just tidy up the edges a little bit. Once you've done that, take the entire kit to your sink, put some washing up liquid in there, and give the whole lot a really, really good scrub with a toothbrush and some washing up liquid. What you're looking to do there is get the mould release off the surface of the model, because the mould release will stop the paint sticking later on. At some point when I do this, somebody is going to start screaming the word lanolin, which is the chemical put into washing up liquid to make your hands nice and soft. And they will say, oh, but paint won't stick to that. There's a bit of a modeller's myth. Certainly nowadays, I know nobody who has real problems with lanolin. It certainly doesn't affect me. I do rinse stuff off under a cold tap an awful lot after I've given it a good scrub in the sink though. So perhaps that's washing the worst of it off. Certainly give it a clean and then dry it off. While you're working with hot water, the other thing to bear in mind with resin is that the parts can warp slightly. As they come out of the mould, as they set, they can take a little bit of a bend on. But if you hold them in warm water, and when we say warm water, we don't mean boiling hot, but certainly the stuff that means you don't want to keep your hand in it for too long, just sit the part in the warm water, and then when you take it out, just tweak it back into shape with your fingers. And you can take quite big twists out of resin items for doing this. Take it out of there, twist it out with your fingers, hold it, and ideally run it under the cold tap, and that will just it'll just make the resin nice and hard again, and so you will have taken out any bends. Again, didn't really have a problem with this kit. One or two of the roof bits just needed a little bit of a tweak, and that was just me being fussy. Okay, at that point the kit is ready to assemble. I've got all my bits and I've got all everything's nice and clean. So the first job is decide what sort of glue I'm using. I'm going to be using super glue because I'm quite happy using it, and it's great, does stick resin very, very nicely. But I know people are often not comfortable with super glue because they think it goes kind of go off too fast and you're not getting enough wiggle room while you're assembling things. So the other thing that works very well is epoxy resin. I'm using a really, really cheap 5-minute curing glue here, and all I'll do is I'll just mix up a little bit on the corner of my modelling board and stick the parts together with that. Now, here's Phil's handy hint for mixing epoxy resin when you don't want to make a mess. Either work on an old bit of packaging. If you've got, look through the bin, you'll find all sorts of plastic pots and stuff, or little card pots, yogurt pots, that sort of thing. Great for mixing resin. If you haven't got any of that handy, take some perfectly normal sellotape and overlap some strips on the corner of the modelling board. And once you've done that, you've got a nice plasticky area to which you can put your blobs of glue. He says just squirt a little bit out there just to prove it works. A little bit of glue out there. And put the top on. Always put the top on this stuff, and always make sure you get the top the right way around, because if you get it the wrong way around once, it's stuck there forever. That's why you use cheap glues if you make a mistake with that one. Got me glue here. Mix it up on the corner of the board, and then I can use that, and all I'll do is I'll just put a little bit, in this case what I'll do is I'll put a little bit on the edge there, same as I'm going to do with the super glue, and hold the two parts together. Holding them together while the glue goes off can be a little bit of a challenge. So another handy tool, are these corner clamps. I think these ones are from Prozis, but there are several other model railway traders do them. They are made of plastic and they've got magnets in. All you do is place your building in there, and a little bit of a juggle, but there we have it. The parts are held in place. He says, there we go. And that will hold quite nicely while the glue sets. And yes, you will get a little bit quicker about juggling these things around. If you don't have corner clamps like this, blue tack will do the job pushed into the corners, but of course it will stick to the glue, so you will be left a little bit of blue tack residue on the inside. The other one, quite like a bit of masking tape put on the outside of the join. That will hold it in place. Again, you just got to be a bit careful, because if the glue splurges out, then it will stick to the masking tape. Not a huge problem with epoxy. You can usually just carve it away later on once it's dried. Okay, the clever thing with the clamps is they've got bits around the corner, so if any glue splurges out, it won't stick the clamp to the building. These are quite a modestly priced little accessory. Yeah, you'll get a set for around 5 or 6 quid. And again, once you've bought them, you've got them forever. You are not going to wear these out, and you'll find they're very, very useful for resin buildings, card buildings, all sorts of things where you want to hold the parts together at a right angle and just work on them. What are you going to do with the leftover glue? Well, the clever bit about the sellotape method is, to clean up, all you do is peel the sellotape off the corner of the board, roll it up, and that goes straight in the bin, and you've not got glue everywhere. That's quite a handy little hint if you want to keep the work area nice and clean, because gluey marks on the outside of the buildings never look good. However, for speed, this time I'm just going to use a bit of super glue, and I'm going to be brave and just apply it straight to the building. And you do need to check how good your glue is when you're working with this. There's a decision also to be made as to whether you which way round the corners go. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking it'd be slightly easier if the fronts just went inside the ends. But there's no obvious mark on there to tell me. I've checked that. I've worked this out simply by holding the roof against it and working out that means the roof will fit reasonably nicely. So what I'll do now is I'll just stick all the rest of the bits of building together, and we'll come back and just look at and talk about the finishing process. Right, there we are. I've been away and I've had a go at finishing the building, and I think it's come up rather nicely. Now the process from sticking the bits together to fully painted took a little bit of work. First job was to use a bit of filler along the roof line and one or two other places, especially the corners, just to tidy up the gaps on the corners and make it look nice and solid. The filler has the added benefit providing a bit of strength as well to the joint. After that, although it doesn't really need it, I sprayed some primer on this, and I just wafted over some greys and blacks from some sprayed primers just to give myself a base colour to work with, and then painted it all over with track colour, because I paint things brown, and initially I painted the roof black and then over with a dark grey. Finished up with a wash of dark brown weathering inks, and then finally a good dusting of weathering powders. Now, great opportunity this. I was able to use a lot of the green weathering powder that barely gets any use when I'm modelling, but I thought let's have some nice lichen on the roof, so a really good scrub with the green weathering powders, and it just brings up the tiles, makes it look sufficiently ramshackle, and there we are, job done.
So last month, some of you might recall that I built this little etched brass kit from 7 models and soldered it together just to prove some basic demonstrations of soldering techniques, and very nicely it is too, and easy to put together. But now comes the time to paint it, and so I've got some basic tools here. I'm going to show you in a step-by-step format how we can transform this little plate layers hut into something that you can add to your layout. Let's get started. So I'm just going to talk through some of the basic tools that I'm going to use for painting. You'll note that it's already received a little coat of some grey etched primer. Now that's because I'm going to be using some water-based paints, acrylics here, and it just gives them a little bit of a key and helps them adhere to the shiny, smooth brass surface of the model. So a quick spray with this, it's Mr. Surfacer 500 from Mr. Hobby, and it dries very fast if you just apply a thin coat. Leave it a couple of hours and you should be good to go. So with that in mind, it's now ready to start painting, and obviously a selection of tools here. I've got some coarse bristles on the paintbrush front. I've got some very fine detail ones which are good for adding little bits of detail into corners, things like that. I'm going to be using some paints from Life Colour, and that's where this little set comes in quite handily. I haven't used it before, so we're going to give it a test. It's the Whitewood kit from Life Colour, and you get 6 shades inside there in the box, and well, pretty much all the wood tones that you're going to need. So let's get started by applying a base coat to the kit, and then we'll go ahead and add some of these. So whilst you all relax to the soothing jazz tones selected by our video crew, it's time to get mixing some paints, and I'm using a little saucer here, 2 colours together, and just working my way down just to make sure that we highlight and emphasise the grain of the wood. Now if you miss something, it's not too much of a problem, you can always go back and highlight it later on, but for the areas of brick I like to mix a 50-50 consistency of some of the red oxide colour and a red oxide weathering powder, which I find gives a very good hue and quite realistic colour for the brick. Highlighting the chimney pot and slate is done quite easily with some smoke colour from Humbrol and again a little bit of black paint. And I'm using the same smoke weathering powder just to highlight some of the areas of the roof where you'd likely get some rain and a little bit of debris up there. And now to the second colour of paint, which is a slightly lighter shade, just to emphasise some of the lighter shades of wood. So there you go, that's the second of the wood effects applied to the outside of the building, and you can start to see we've got some appearance of grain, and it's bringing out a little bit of detail there that wouldn't ordinarily be there. But I'm going to start painting the window frames now on this little shed, and they are very fine, and because I don't want to get paint on the outside of the building around the little frames, I'm going to use a fine brush and just dip it in a rust colour that I've mixed up here. Just to represent, you know, something that's been outside for a long time. A bit of neglect has taken place. The paint has all disappeared. So just getting all of the paint onto the brush and making sure that it's got a very fine pointy tip. If you can see that on a white background there. And that will help us get into the corners of the windows without getting paint to onto the surrounding areas. So I like to start from one corner, say this one here, and work inwards all the time, working your way inside to the inside of the window frame. And it just prevents you getting any paint on the surrounding areas where you don't want them to be. This isn't one of the steps that you'd probably want to do if you don't have a very steady hand, but you can soon overcome that with some masking tape, worst case scenario, just to overcome some of those issues. One final step just to complete and tie everything together is the application of a bit of black smoke weathering powder. So there you go, a few final touches with the dry brushing there just to highlight some of the areas where it would be in shadow and where the rain wouldn't wash the grime out, and a little bit around the base there where you'd get some mud splashing up every time it rains. So 3 brushes, a few colours and pigments, and hey presto, one painted shed. I hope that's shown you some of the basic techniques and an introduction to painting your models. Give it a go, let's see some of your models. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this episode of Brm TV as much as we enjoyed making it, and don't forget there's plenty more next month, and let us know what you think of the episodes of Brm TV. Get in touch with us at brm@warnersgroup.co.uk. Until next time, happy modelling.